Welcome, everyone. This is When Can We Play Live Again? I'm Debbie Stanley, your moderator, and I'm honored to introduce our panelists. Today we have Stephanie Bergera, who works in Artist and Industry Development for the City of Austin Music and Entertainment Division, and who is also lead singer of the Selena tribute band Bidi Bidi Banda. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
We also have Elizabeth K. Wine, who is a music advocate and strategist, and founder and executive director of the nonprofit Music Export Memphis. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
And we have Randy Nichols, music industry tech consultant, artist manager, and managing director of Force Media Management out of New York. Welcome, Randy.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Tonight's panel is part of a larger operation called Music Prize. This is an annual competition that's been going for 9 years now, and this year we're expanding to include a conference with roundtable discussions hosted by industry veterans and influencers. Competitors will be judged both on their live performance and on their engagement in the conference. So that's pretty cool. The top cash prize is $10,000, which is great, but we believe the opportunity to connect with industry folks who can open doors for you is priceless. So leading up to the big conference and competition, we're hosting these free virtual roundtables on the second Wednesday of each month, now through September. We'll do virtual semifinals in July, and we'll do the live in-person finals, both the conference and the performances, in Shreveport, Louisiana, September 24th through 26th. And you'll find all the details about this at prizefest.com/music. And I think that we can have our trusty sound engineer, Melissa, put that into the chat, prizefest.com/music. Now, for future listeners, I want to note that we're holding this conversation on April 14th, 2021, about 13 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. Artists have lost over a year of live shows. Fans have lost over a year of live shows. And the venues that survived the last year are still very much in peril. So live music needs to come back. And some of it already has, especially outdoors. But as of today, only about 23% of the US population has been vaccinated. So the pandemic is still an enormous problem in our lives, both medically and economically. The question on the table for us today is, when can we play live again? In theory, the answer is now, but the further questions are where and how do we do it safely? Audience, I will ask you to add your questions to the Q&A section here. And Stephanie, I'm going to start with you. From your perspective as a band leader, how are you navigating the transition back into live performance?
Carefully. So first things first, I play in a band with upwards of 9 people. We've played with up to 11 people in the band. When this happened, just like everyone else, I saw what it was like to see tens of thousands of dollars disappear from my potential income over the course of about 10 days. Everyone just started dropping out, and it made sense in the long run, but it was terrifying. The first question that we asked when we thought about doing it, we did play a show in August of last year, and it was just rough. No one wanted to touch anyone. We didn't want anyone to touch our things. It was really not ideal. And music brings people together, and it makes people want to be friendly and give hugs and be together and dance together. And it was just really not ideal. So when we decided to make a full-blown reintegration back into live music performance, the first question I asked my 9 players was, who wants to play? Who's comfortable playing? And I got immediate feedback from 2 of my musicians who actually got COVID over the summer of last year that they were ready to play. They were, they needed the income, were ready to play. I had 2 musicians tell me they weren't going to play until they got vaccines. I had 2 musicians tell me they wouldn't play until there was herd immunity and that the general population, there was mass vaccines. And then we went from there. So we are playing shows actively. We played our first show of 2021 2 weeks ago in Plano, Texas, and 1,200 people showed up. And at the beginning, we're on their best behavior, but once alcohol and music comes together and gets to be late at night, people start to get a little more loose. So top of mind always, the thing I'm having to keep in mind, I sing in a Selena tribute band. Selena's 50th birthday is on Friday. This is a big popular week for me. The thing I'm trying to keep in mind the most is that I can only be responsible for myself. And I can't, what we're not going to do is stand on stage and be judgmental or pessimistic or judgy mid conversation. Can't do that. So carefully, slowly but surely. You know, and I've got players now who are, I think the band is 60% vaccinated at this point. So we are reintegrating as carefully, as quickly as we can, but it's definitely going to be a long journey.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird year after a really weird year. Elizabeth, let me ask you the same question or a similar question from your perspective as the leader of a nonprofit called Music Export Memphis, which does exactly what it sounds like, right? So I'm guessing that it's been fairly dormant for the last year. How are you getting artists back out on the road, and what are you hearing from them about where they're playing, whether they want to play, how they're doing it safely?
Yeah, so we definitely were on pause for the last year in terms of our traditional programming, which all center around live music, whether it is providing tour grants to Memphis artists who are on the road nationally and internationally, or producing our own events at festivals and in cities around the country. But I will say that we did have the opportunity to run a COVID relief operation, and we granted out more than $300,000 to Memphis musicians and music professionals, and we're immensely proud of that work. So you know, grateful that we kind of had the granting mechanisms in place to be able to do that. We are what, 4 months, not even, into 2021. We've seen 2 ambassadors, what we call them, apply for and be funded for tour grants. 2. Ordinarily, we would have between 5 and 10 a month that we would be funding in the before time, you know, but prior to all of this. So while I was really excited to see those come through, it's, you know, it's a far cry from what it used to be. And the other thing that I'll note is that our program, our minimum for that program is that artists have 5 dates confirmed outside the city. We have, you know, radiuses they have to hit, but 5 dates is the important thing. And one of the bands that we funded was a blues band that we've funded quite a bit in the past, Ghost Town Blues Band. And they typically are coming to us with, you know, 25, 35 date runs, and they had cobbled together 5 dates. So that they could get the money. I mean, you know, there just really was not a ton of opportunity out there. That's how they make their living, obviously. This is an interesting week for me personally, for us to be having this conversation, because we just started talking locally about our benefit event. The only event that we do during the course of a year that's actually in Memphis is, you know, raises money for our programs. And we, of course, weren't able to do it in 2020. And now we're talking about, okay, well, what are our dates? It's going to happen this fall, which is kind of a wild feeling. But we are also doing it at the largest venue we've ever held the event at, and it is an outdoor venue. Even though we are looking ahead to September or October, because I think that there are still a few questions for me. You know, we're in a period right now that's really going to tell us so much. Yes, people are getting vaccinated. It's really exciting to see that happen. But I think there are just still questions about, what does vaccination and immunity really look like long term? And, you know, with some of the variants that have come out. So I think, you know, we're dipping our toe in, and we're planning these events in the future, knowing that even though it's 6 months from now, probably are still going to want to be outside, and we're probably still going to want to have some distance. And there's also no way to know right now what, you know, again, the case numbers are still going to look like a few months from now. So we're dipping our toe in, but there are a lot of unknowns. And I think, you know, the challenge too for our artists is different markets are experiencing different realities, right? We know this across the country. Case numbers look different in different states. So when you're trying to plan a tour and be kind of aware of, you know, what the reality is in, you know, Georgia or Michigan versus where you are now, that throws a whole other wrench in.
For sure. Yeah, that's something that I just made a little note to make sure that we touch on, you know, the different markets and different realities in different parts of the country. Speaking of which, Randy, you're in New York, and I know that you work with artists, you know, beyond that area, but report out from where you are. What are you seeing with the artists that you work with? What's their comfort level? Where are they going? Is there a difference in indoor versus outdoor, other than, you know, the obvious differences? What do you have to share here?
Yeah, I actually have my first sort of performance that I'm going to go see one of my artists do since the pandemic on Saturday, but it's playing on the rooftop deck of the owner of a venue's condo. But he's like opening up to like 25 people, and it's just trying to get people comfortable with the idea of shows again up here. And everyone that's there needs to be vaccinated. They're still going to do social distancing and masks. So that's my first time. Like, I went to my wife the other day and said, hey, I'm going out to go to a show Saturday. I just want to let you know I won't be around. And it's kind of just like, a wow, there's something we haven't discussed in a really, really long time. So like in that sense, that's exciting, although it's kind of, you know, an anomaly too. There's really not a lot of live music yet in New York. They're just starting some plans to open things up, and it's beginning. Like, you have a New York City Winery, which is a really great venue that's doing socially distanced small shows. They sell tickets by the table. So we're seeing kind of what, you know, a lot of us thought would happen. It's just these slow steps to reopening, and my feeling is it's gonna go faster than we all expect. But I also kind of equate this to like playing roulette. The wheel is spinning and the ball is going to drop on a date. No one knows what that date is going to be. That date could be July 1st. It could be August 1st. It could be January 1st. But we all feel like that date is coming, and some people, I feel, are planning early and are gonna, you know, mess up their plans a bit because they're too hopeful. But some of those people are gonna win too, who put together plans to, you know, take a little bit more risk. And ultimately, like, my view on this is just the smaller artists, for the first time in many years, benefit the most with the reopening, because they're the most nimble. These large bands where members are spread across the country, they need to fly crew in, they need pre-production, all this other stuff. It all gets in the way of the local club owner that says, you know what, let's try opening Saturday and see what happens. Let's call our old standby locals and see who could come in and do it. And I think short term, you're going to see a really great opportunity. Probably like Stephanie, you're probably seeing a little bit of that right now, right?
100%. As I was driving my son home from school, I got an inquiry for a show on May 1st. And if this were 2 years ago, I'd be like, not on your life ever. But I'm like, could we do May 1st? We can't. I'm out of town. But like, you know, I 100% agree with the fact that like we're having to make accommodations for and plan to play shows with a band that's closer. I have an accordion player out of Phoenix who just can't play with us right now. There's no way I can fly him in for every single show. We're taking a lot of smaller guarantees. We're trying some new markets. To Elizabeth's point, we're cobbling together kind of routed dates that could be a tour, and things are dropping off and picking up. It's going to ebb and flow, and it's going to continue to be this way. We booked a show in January for one of the municipalities out in the Dallas area. And they emailed me this morning telling me that they are having an emergency meeting tomorrow to discuss the status of the show. So, you know, that's going to continue to happen. I 100% agree with you though, Randy, is that the bands that can be nimble and can pick up and play in 3 days and are ready to go, those are the bands that are really going to have an easier time reintegrating back into live playing.
Yeah, and conversely, it's better for the venues too, because if you cancel on a local band, you're not really burning a bridge. And they understand, they live there, they know the same challenges the venue's dealing with. So if all you lose is a practice, that's not a huge risk for you. But for somebody to have booked travel, whether it be buses, flights, anything else, it becomes a much larger risk. So it's the ecosystem, you know, should strengthen in a sense where local artists can support their venues and venues can support their local artists.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what all of you have to say more about the ecosystem. You know, how has this affected the viability of venues and the variability of venues? You know, people are getting more creative with outdoor shows. House concerts have, at least in the Austin area, have become even more of a thing. Fans seem to be a little more understanding of, you know, having to be uncomfortable. But at the same time, ticket prices are higher because, you know, venues and promoters are wanting to hedge their bets and sell blocks of tickets, right? And so you have to buy the block of ticket and hope you can get your friends to come. So thoughts on how the ecosystem around the venues and the artists and the symbiosis there?
I mean, I'll jump in. I think one of the things that you brought up is something that I feel like I think about a lot, which is we can have a whole conversation about how our artists are feeling about their own safety and what it looks like to perform live, but our audiences have to feel safe and ready to show up. And I think I feel encouraged. Actually, Stephanie, your example of, it really encouraged me, of 1,200 people, but like I just question it. I don't know how I'm going to feel the first time I show up to a small crowded venue, after more than a year of feeling like I need to keep my distance from other people. I mean, I naturally sort of jump back from other humans in like the walkway at this point, right? We all do. You're passing by someone and your body just sort of moves to get away from them. And I think we really do have to take into account, what we've been through and how people are going to be willing to come back into spaces. I've seen a few concerts have been announced here in the last couple of weeks, and some friends of mine are the folks who are organizing them, and these are concerts that would have typically been like a $5 cover, or even there are a couple that would have been free that are now like a $50 ticket, but it's the only way that they can limit the audience to the size it has to be limited to and still make the math work, still break even on, being able to compensate the artist, and check all those boxes. So I think that this is going to be a strange time, but I think things will settle back. In fact, my fear is that they'll settle back too much. What I really hope happens on the other side of this, at least here, hope it happens everywhere, but I can't speak to the live music economy everywhere. But we're far too used to paying $5 for a multi-band bill here, and that has to change. It's not a sustainable. This is not sustainable, period. A venue can't sustain, they can't pay artists a living wage. So, I think that I think it will settle, but I'm actually kind of hopeful that this sort of ballooning, this inflation of this moment, might mean that it settles back at a slightly higher price point, that we get used to paying a little bit more during this period, and that our memory is long for what's happened and what we've been missing.
Yeah, I'd like to point out also, when you talked about, what the fan appetite will be to coming back, the thing I can tell you is from everyone I'm talking to in the industry who has tours going on sale for either the fall or next year are seeing surprisingly strong numbers, like stronger than before COVID. Like the people I'm talking to are trying to figure out how to rush on sales to happen, because you want to be one of the first 20 tours on sale rather than one of the last 20. And, the fear is how strong will that demand stay as there's more options. Yeah. But right now, due to the limited amount of options of tours going up, the demand is just unbelievable. But there's also the concern right now from people, though, which is, does it look like you're in poor light going up too soon with a tour? Even if the tour is for next year, do you seem like you're not thinking about safety? Even though, conventional wisdom tells us by February we should be in a much better place. But perception today is you're putting tickets on sale that you're not concerned about people's safety. And that to me seems to be one of the biggest challenges being faced on the larger size of tours, is public perception of planning for the future rather than the now, because we're all looking 6-8 months ahead and don't want to be canceled for not planning, but we are actually planning. But sometimes, one press release and then, some website can spin something to be very much something it's not.
Oh my God. 100%. One picture of just like people having too much fun at your show. We had a great show at this wonderful outdoor venue in Plano, Texas called Legacy Hall. It's a 3-tier outdoor space. They hard ticketed the show. We've played there 5 times. They hard ticketed the show for the first time. And another interesting thing is you can really in real time track your counts. You can see when you're sold out. You can see when you're nearly done. We have a show May 28th in Fort Worth. This is not meant to be a humble brag, or it is a not so humble brag. We have a show May 28th that went on sale in Fort Worth, Texas on Monday. It is Wednesday, and they are 10 tickets away from being sold out. 500 tickets. People are excited to come back. People are so excited to come back. But we had all that to say, that show in Plano, we had beautiful pictures. People were having a great time. It was socially distanced, but we're terrified to post them because we don't want the perception to be that we were doing this too soon or that people weren't being safe. I mean, we can't, I feel, I struggle with being held responsible for controlling the masses in that way. You know, I can't do that. I can't take on that responsibility. At the end of the day, I'm in a marginally successful band, and we have to, I don't feel obligated, but I want to do this so that I can go back out and make money and stay active and be able to have, you know, something to come back to. I have a mortgage, I have things to take care of. And this is definitely all a part of that. So I can't go into the office every time and feel like I need to be held responsible for controlling the masses and how they're going to behave after they've had 3 beers and are hearing dance music. So
yeah, it's a huge challenge. You know, like for us with this band Under Oath that I manage, the first show we put up on sale, we were very clear in our messaging saying we plan to play the show in September if it's safe. If, you know, it is not safe, the show will not happen, and, you know, people will not be responsible for the cost of the tickets, blah, blah, blah. Like, we came up with very specific language to make people feel comfortable that we weren't just launching. And we're always going to do those things to protect them, but we felt like we had to over exaggerate how concerned we are to make sure that, you know, on the public perception side, at the end of the day, you know, the band members, they don't want to be in an unsafe situation either. But, you know, you got to worry about public perception.
Mm-hmm. It's funny too, because, you know, opening day of Major League Baseball was last week. And I just feel like, I don't know, maybe this is just me being a music person versus being a professional sports person. I looked at the audience or the stadium at the opening day of the Texas Rangers game, and it was nearly packed.
That was bananas.
And that when the Texas Rangers weren't canceled, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I feel like there's
Texas Rangers. Just listen to their name.
I just think that like musicians were the first group of people to be asked to stop doing work in a regular capacity in which they operate, and they're gonna be the last to go back into working in a capacity that they're used to, and I do think that it'll never go back to the way that it was in its true form, where, like, you know, you're playing in a club and you're literally pressed up against. I just keep thinking about, like, when was the most uncomfortable I've ever been at a show physically, and it was at ACL Festival watching Pearl Jam, just like pressed up against 2 other human beings, but like, and literally my feet coming off the ground, but we were so close. I'm like, that can't ever happen again. Or I don't feel like it'll totally happen again, but like, I just like, I can't envision that happening anytime that I would go back and do that again.
See, I expect to see mosh pits by the end of the year. I'm not saying I will be in them, but I expect to see them.
I think, to me, the question is more, what does the audience share look like, right? That is those people. Because I agree with you, like, all of that, both of you, all of that stuff is coming back. But I think that when we start to think about the bigger ecosystem picture of all of the music venues in our communities, who is supporting them, how, you know, if we're looking at the music fans in our community as a sort of demographic, 100% of them are not going to feel safe going back to a mosh pit. A really good percentage are, but 100% aren't. And, you know, that's, I think, what I am afraid of. It is this sort of like, what does that audience share look like? And is that audience share enough to support all of our venues when they come back? You know, one of the things that I feel like is getting drilled into my head right now as a nonprofit executive is whenever you come back, whatever it is you do, it better be like the most insane thing you've ever done. It better be amazing, because everyone else is going to be in the space too. And that's sort of a guidance I'm getting from like a fundraising perspective. Like, you know, you better throw the best party of all time, but it's true here too. Like, you know, I think as things, maybe not right now, but as things ramp up, and up, like there is going to be there's going to be a lot going on. And I think that my hope is that there's enough, I don't know, I feel like I'm the pessimist in this conversation, but I just hope there's enough audience share to support all of these venues, because obviously so many of them are just hanging on by a thread.
No, you're right though. And with the increased ticket prices, and the ticket prices should increase, and the guarantee to the artist should not be impacted in any way. I feel very strongly about that. But we have a show on Friday in Dallas proper, and the ticket, one of the tables, you can purchase this table to one of our shows for $500. And I texted the band, I'm like, I wouldn't pay $500 to see us. Maybe if there were chicken wings or something included, but I would not pay that money. But there's 2 of the 10 tables left. So, will that momentum continue? I don't think so. But I think that right now we're in a place where people are really excited to see shows, and the perception is, and it should be this way, that you're paying for your safety, you're paying to secure your spot, and that you're paying for something that is going to, be completely safe and be contained and be there for you. You're paying for your experience now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of pent up depression with fans. People have been missing music for so long, and if they have the means, then they're willing to pay more now. And, hopefully it will settle back into a greater value of music and of independent artists and of the experience. And, we won't have, oh, well, if it's not a free show, then I'm not going. But Stephanie, I mean, for what it's worth, I think that your show is definitely worth $500.
Well, it's
and we're seeing
tab, how they're doing. It's really interesting, and we've seen all different kinds of ways in which people are doing these table reservations at this point. So it's $500, and they charge your card, and then you go and you eat and drink whatever you're going to drink. Your table does that, and at the end of the night, they put the balance back on your card with the perception that you're going to spend $500 maybe, or whatever.
Okay. Oh, that's really, and it's this kind of innovation that's interesting. And the people who have been getting back out into live music are starting to see that already. But I'm also interested in if any of you are finding pressure from public perception in the opposite direction, from people who think the virus is overblown, or who want to not have their personal health governed, and they want to have the freedom to go to a show if they want to go. So are your artists, or are you yourselves feeling pressure from folks in that mindset? And is it contributing to artists having, a fear of missing out on this opportunity wave that might be starting right now?
Yeah, I have to say, in my background, I haven't heard anyone that's felt pressured by it. And honestly, the people I've spoken to who have heard people who are critical of why they're not playing almost laugh it off. There's zero pressure, because it's either the deniers who don't believe that any of this is real and the government is controlling us all, which is fine. You have every right to your belief, and I'm not here to have a political discussion. But the bottom line is, whether you believe that or not, up until now, regulations haven't allowed us to play. So you could be mad at us, or you could be mad at the government, but either way, if we wanted to play shows, we couldn't play shows. So, just keep it to yourself. We can't help you. That's kind of been the vibe that I've had in thinking about the small handful of fans who do complain, which is, honestly, it's very small, but you're always going to have people unhappy no matter what you do.
Yeah, we are not here for the conversation about whether or not we're willing to risk or play, play roulette with the safety of the people who come to our shows, to the safety of our families, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, those are the people we care more about, is, who we're coming home to, what we're bringing home in all reality. So I have 2 players who are immunocompromised and are not playing until there are significantly more vaccinated human beings in this country. They're just not doing it. And I understand that. And I book manage and publish publicity for my band. Everything runs through me. So all the decisions have really had to be carefully thought out. And, we just aren't here for that conversation about people who think that we need to just come and play a show because it's, we haven't been back to wherever it is that they live in 18 months. I don't feel pressured in that way at all.
Yeah, I want to throw one other thing out there. I saw yesterday or the day before a quote from Ted Nugent, who's, kind of our go-to rock star conservative, like whatever you want to call him, who was critical of everyone and everything for shutting down shows. And on the topic of what you pointing out, he's criticizing everything, but he ain't playing shows. So clearly he's not being pressured into doing it, and nobody pressures Ted. So like that kind of just sums it up pretty well for me.
It's the beauty of gig economy too. It's like you can pick and choose what you want to play. If I don't feel comfortable playing this indoor club that's at 200 capacity, that isn't looks like they don't have any safety information on their website anyway. Like I don't have to do that. I don't have to go anywhere. So that's the beauty of being a gig worker.
Yeah. Elizabeth, does it look any different from the nonprofit perspective?
I mean, I really haven't experienced that much of this. But we haven't been producing events because everything's been on hold. I don't know what I haven't heard anything from folks that are on the road about what they're experiencing, but every musician that I have spoken with that we work with is first and foremost concerned about the safety of themselves and the musicians in their band, the other artists that they perform with. So I think it's a lot of what Randy and Stephanie both said. It's just sort of, we don't have any time for people who are gonna have that attitude. And I think it's been difficult because we have, I think, in Tennessee, it's not that different from Texas. We're a blue dot in a very red state. And there's been no statewide mask mandate. Like there's been a lot of mixed messaging. But the artists are prioritizing their own safety. And again, it's just sort of like, if they're going to also therefore prioritize being in spaces. If they are performing, they're going to prioritize being in spaces that have their own mask mandate. And I don't have time for it. It's that's definitely the attitude, which I think is the right one.
Right. And to touch on, Debbie and I are both in Austin, but to touch on the temperament of the venues in Austin, one person got vaccinated in Texas and the governor's like, Texas is open again, let's do it. So the venues immediately were like, specifically one of my favorite venues to play in Austin, the Mohawk, sent a tweet and they're like, nah, we're going to wait until we feel safe again. So most of the venues in downtown Austin, I would say, and Debbie, please feel free to jump in and tell me if you feel like this is incorrect, but most of our downtown venues remain closed. There hasn't been a full a venue that I know of that's like, we're open again, we're up and running. But again, Austin is the blueberry and that big bowl of tomato soup that is Texas, for sure.
For indoor venues,
I'm gonna use that again. Sorry, blueberry tomato soup.
For indoor venues, for sure. We have the luxury here of being able to put on shows outdoors because of the weather. It's nice, other than snowpocalypse. So yeah, I think that's a distinction that here in the South, we will definitely make between indoor and outdoor shows or outdoor spaces that are turned into pop-up venues. But yeah, I don't know of any indoor music venues that are open right now. I know some restaurants are open with limited capacity and they've been keeping some artists, fed. They've been providing them some income over the year, but outdoor venues, some of them are fully open, but they're still very much, they take your temperature when you come in. You're wearing a mask if you're not at your table, and they're distancing and lots of, hand sanitizer everywhere. So do you see any difference about that? Randy, I know you're up in New York, so you're kind of hampered by the weather. And Elizabeth, you're saying that, in Memphis, even though, your climate might be a bit conducive to it, you're still really not seeing many shows. Any more thoughts on indoor versus outdoor and the difference in opportunity based on just the climate of where you are in the country?
For New York, I think, and the North in general, we're going to see a lot more outdoor events popping up. But I think a lot of the traditional outdoor venues, I think you're going to see the amphitheaters by July opening up here at, there's a perception right now that it's going to be at full capacity from what I'm hearing from people. Whether that becomes a reality is still a huge question mark. But, there's going to be, everything that was a successful outdoor show last year. I feel like people are booking them again. I'm hearing stories of that. And I think people are going to learn from what worked and expand and grow. Like I know there's a guy who's doing drive-in shows in, God, where was it? Like Cape Cod or something last summer, is now doing a series of shows in Charleston, South Carolina in pods, like safe venues. And, you're seeing people network groups together to do these things. AEG just announced they're doing something in, I believe, Cheyenne, Wyoming. So it's creating new spaces for people to create these pop-up outdoor venues. But one interesting thing, just going back to Austin, and I know that the intentions are right from 99% of the large venue owners down there, but they kind of don't have a choice in not opening because they don't have the content of the artists to open the door, even if they were against, the shunning of everyone else. There's just not the content there. Until artists are really ready to go out and tour, it doesn't work. And I don't think you're going to see national touring from mid to larger size acts actually take off until it's safe to tour in the vast majority of cities, because you can't go out and do a piecemeal tour where you're skipping huge parts of the country. And especially, those little blueberries, as you described them, those blue dots are some of the higher paying gigs. And if you have to skip those higher paying gigs that subsidize the lower paying gigs, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So actually, last week, I think, a concert went on sale. A series of concerts was announced. We have a Levitt venue here in Memphis, the Levitt Shell, and actually where Elvis played his very first gig back when it was a band shell. Just drop some trivia there. But it is obviously incredibly popular in the pre-pandemic times for its free concert series that they host in the spring and fall. And so they just announced last week a series of ticketed concerts that are essentially going to help pay for a limited free run of concerts in the fall. And I want to be clear for those who aren't familiar with the Levitt model, it's free to the audience, but a well-paying gig for the musician. So always want to clarify that. But they announced the North Mississippi All-Stars. These concerts are going to start in May. Their venue, they're still governed by a lower capacity here locally in the county. And so I think the capacity of the shell has got to be in close to 3,000, 2,000 maybe. And their capacity right now is 438. That's what they're limited to. So they're creating pods, but they've gotten really creative and they're partnering with local chefs to do a food basket too. And so they're really able to kind of upsell this experience. And that concert sold out in 20 minutes. So, I think we are starting to see a little bit, but I think, to all the points you've made, we don't have a ton of outdoor venues. And so the ones we do have, we are starting to see some motion there. And we have actually, Lucero did a big drive-in concert literally at our drive-in, at the drive-in theater a couple of weekends ago, which I think was also close to sold out. So it is about getting inventive with those spaces and places, but I wish more of our venues had outdoor options. Which is what I think of when I think of Austin, is like, I feel like every venue has like a backyard, which is amazing. But yeah.
What a time to be a consumer of music as well, too, to kind of reinvent your experience. I am a born and raised Austin. I've been to every South by since I was 17 years old, maybe one when I was 16. But like, that is all about stacking in as many shows as you possibly can. Like, you go to South by and it's normal to see 10 shows in a day and you're walking and doing the whole thing. And I, remember talking to my parents about this, who are like, my dad was like, when we would go to shows, we would get dressed up, we would get in the car, we would go to dinner, I'd take your mom out, we'd go to the show, we'd have drinks afterward. It's a whole thing. And I think it's fascinating to see kind of the resurgence, even if it's temporary, of that now. Because like in my South by mind, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go see 12 shows today and I'm going to end with the biggest show of the night here. But to go back and be like, one show, one experience, one night. And, I think that it's really beautiful. And I'm optimistic about what that could look like for consumers of live music in the future.
Yeah, quality over quantity.
Yeah. I'm also a crazy person who's been in the music industry for 14 years. So I'm ready to see 10 shows in a day.
Yeah, seriously. So, question for you, my second to last question. Of the artists who are still professional musicians now, the people who did not, either self-select out or get forced out of this career, the ones who have quote unquote survived, tell me about them. Are there commonalities in genre? Are there commonalities in whether they live and breathe live performance versus recording versus writing, size of the band? What do you see as any commonalities in the artists who are now available to start getting back into live performance?
I mean, I think my answer makes me a little sad, but it's, it's not surprising. It's the more resourced artists who are largely white and male, at least from my vantage point. I think that, those also tend to be the artists or the musicians who are most connected to diversified revenue streams, whether it's teaching and they took their teaching on Zoom, or it's session work. Recording in studios obviously has, it's certainly not fully back, but it has been able to come back a lot sooner than live music for a number of reasons. So, having those revenue streams, or being able to, having the kind of, again, the resources and the capability of creating revenue streams through streaming performances, having the savvy to kind of set all of that up. So I think, and that's obviously those aren't the only musicians, but I think that that's the trend that I see. And I've certainly watched a lot of folks take non-music jobs during this time to be able to get by. I remain hopeful that they will quit their job and get back on the road after this is over. But, we all have to make a living, right? We have to pay our bills first and foremost.
I would agree with that. I think those who remained active in the last 14 months are the ones who are being called back. I keep thinking about Jackie Benson, who is an Austin-based musician. She streams, I think, every night or once a week. Is it once a week or what? Every other night for
it's a lot. She's been prolific. Yeah, it's been great.
She ended up being one of the most streamed artists in the country via Polestar numbers in 2020. Those who stayed active in what, even if they weren't producing or releasing music, if they were active on their socials, for myself, like, we'd go on Instagram Live every Monday night and do some Selena thing. We'd watch the movie, or we'd watch the Netflix series, or we'd just talk about costumes. If you were staying active and people know that you didn't go anywhere, even if you weren't playing shows, I think that's really who's going to come out of this thing ready to play and ready to come out swinging. And I feel like I'm following in Jackie's footsteps. Everywhere she plays, I'm playing like 2 weeks later. So
fun. Okay.
Yeah, we're playing like an interesting game of hopscotch. But I really do think that that's who's going to be ready to come out of this thing, blowing and going pretty fast.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, not to sound all corporate-y here, but what I've seen is the artists who have done best and are going to get through this the easiest are the ones that built a really strong direct-to-consumer fan base relationship, where they have Shopify stores that allow them to sell and communicate easily with their fans. They've been able to create and produce live streams. They've been able to create more merch drops. They've been able to create, maybe a Twitch channel. And,
oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of new, like, some going back to old ways and looking at it differently, and some bringing in completely new ideas. And to not use a white male artist as the description, I'd say like Melissa Etheridge has done an unbelievable job over the last year building a new form of relationships with her fans, creating a subscription service that has different ways to interact with fans on different days. And I don't know what her numbers are like now, but she launched doing, $50,000 a month in these relationships with fans. And while a smaller artist is going to look at that and go, well, it doesn't work for me, she's rich. But like, I talked to another artist who, has a day job working at a merch company, printing t-shirts, and he created a Patreon where he changed how he's operating some of his social posts and what he's sharing with fans and what he's creating, and moved more of it to Patreon, and is doing like $2,000 a month on Patreon, replacing what was, maybe $2,000 a month from live performances that he had before. So there's ways that people have been able to pivot, and the ones who got really creative in trying to figure that out succeeded the most. And it's one of the things that I got strongly involved in this year. And, if you had asked me in May of 2020 if Americans would pay for live streaming concerts, I would have laughed at you and told you there's not a chance. By July, I was the expert in the industry that everyone was calling for advice on how to produce them. And I'm still talking about streaming every day with people and talking about the future of streaming and how it's going to integrate post-pandemic. And things changed, and something that I was adamantly against, I'm the expert in now, and you have to be open to pivot. And it's really important to be open to that pivot.
Yeah, I keep thinking about a word you used earlier, Randy, was being nimble. You have to be quick on your feet. You have to have been ready to make those changes and do all this really, really quickly. And yeah, we were one of the earlier, I think we played our first live stream show 2 days after South by Southwest was canceled. And we didn't do it as we got later and later into the pandemic. We started to do it less just because people were getting exhausted of having to watch streams, and you get lethargic just watching your computer screen on Saturday night. So being nimble, learning how to do things that you were afraid to do before or that you didn't believe in before, was really separated people from the pack in terms of how this is going to look and how they were maintaining success.
One other thing I'd add to that is it's been a good moment for indie artists who are nimble, as we said. One of my biggest clients, they've done successful global touring, but we're also a small indie band that doesn't have these giant teams controlling them, and we were able to get creative in everything that we did because of it, and we can move faster. And those artists who can move faster kind of became the first movers to market that all the superstars were following. And it's just been a really interesting year to watch that happen, where the indie artists are really paving the way in this moment.
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. That's a perfect segue to my last question, which is this. Suppose you're an indie artist, you're nimble, you're ready to get back out, but you're out of practice with your booking pitches and your, all the admin of running your band business. What's your first step? You want to start playing live again. What's your first step?
Well, for me, my first step was setting my terms, setting the terms of what I was definitely okay with and what I was not okay with from the jump. Could that change? Yes. But what am I okay with? If I was to play a show tomorrow, what would be my non-negotiables and going into that space? I think that's your first thing to think about is what are you okay with? What are you really okay with before you get into a position where you're at a venue and they're asking you to use a microphone that 50 people used before you. Are you okay with that? No, I'm not okay with that. One of my non-negotiables is that my computer is rested on my wireless microphone that I invested in. I will not touch another microphone. This is mine. No one can touch mine. That's a non-negotiable. Are the staff committed to taking safety precautions? Determine what your non-negotiable terms are for yourself and your safety and go from there. How many shows do you want to play? What rooms are you looking into playing? You set your terms with yourself, I think, is the best first step.
Yeah, I'd add to that also, go back and look at all those venues that you've played in the past or promoters you've paid for in the past, and reach out to them. Let them know that you're interested and available. Everything Stephanie said is right about setting your own terms, but you need to let people know that you're one of the artists who is available and interested. And reach out to all the people you played for, but maybe some of the people in the bigger venues who you didn't play for but are aware of you. Because as Stephanie mentioned also, there may be opportunities that aren't typically available to you that are.
Yeah.
So reach out and let people know that you want to work. And, once people, connect and say yes, then you've got to set your ground rules, as Stephanie said, but there's going to be opportunity there. You take a venue like the Mohawk in Austin, that's a venue that's mostly national acts, but I would say there's a high likelihood that they're going to have a lot more local acts as they're opening. So don't be afraid to reach out. And if you're in Austin, maybe reach out to a Dallas venue, because they're going to start looking, when they look beyond their Dallas artists and they need new blood to bring into the venues, they may look at, Austin and Houston and Oklahoma City, people who are willing to drive in, 5-6 hours, but aren't going to get the national act. So just be creative and look what's going on around you, and you can create opportunity.
Agree 100%.
Yeah, the Mohawk is a great example because they have the big outdoor stage, but they also have like a 100 cap indoor room. And if you've played that indoor room before, reach out and say, hey, do you have room for me on the big stage?
100%. Agree
Yeah.
with everything Randy just said. 100%.
Elizabeth, what else? What would be an artist's first step?
I mean, something that, I'm a recovered music publicist, and worked with a lot of independent artists starting out, like very, very much starting out. And one of the things that the piece of advice I always gave them, and I think it's really relevant here, is to look across look to your peer artists and see what they're doing. And I think in this situation, it's particularly relevant for determining what are those venues where you feel like they're doing it right, that, to Stephanie's point, your non-negotiables will be met, you will feel safe. You look to see where your peers are performing and kind of use that, whether that's locally or building out some sort of a regional tour. I think paying attention to what folks at your level, and also always, a level or two up, are doing, and then using that to create a roadmap is always a smart strategy. But I think in this case, particularly so, because it gives you some indication of the places that are open, number one, that are putting on events. And you also have then a point of contact for an artist that can say, yes, it was a good experience. Yes, here's what the guarantee looked like, or here's what the door deal looked like, and here's what the safety looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one other thing I want to throw in there that's just so important that I feel like almost everybody's going to miss, but if they do it, it can make a difference. When you're reaching out to the venue people, ask them how their year's been. Ask them how they've been. Humanize this. Like, these people have been struggling just like you, and they're still struggling. The SBA still hasn't gotten their shit together to pay out on the Save Our Stages grant. They opened the grant program for an hour and the thing crashed and they don't even know when it's going to open. These people are struggling beyond belief. You should be calling them to help them as much as you want them to help you. And if you approach it in that light, you're going to get a lot better reaction than just, how can I get a gig?
Amen.
Totally. Read the room for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that
really
goes for all the time, but even more so now than ever before. And
Yeah.
it's something that everyone forgets.
I think that's a beautiful thing to remember, is that we're all humans and we've all just lived through a year-long trauma, and you want to be considerate of the people who are in your industry and in your ecosystem. You need to take care of each other.
Very well said.
Exactly.
Yes. We have some questions from our Q&A. So and we've got about 7 more minutes. So I'm going to choose this one. Do you think live streaming is going to continue? Randy, you touched on the idea of a hybrid. And how will that affect working musicians? How will it affect music fans? Do you see live streaming as something that's going to be part of our new normal, to use a really tired phrase?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that, being that I'm our live streaming expert on the panel. And I feel so strongly that live streaming has a future that I announced today that I joined the team of a company called Moment House, which is a really great, premium live streaming experience. And I did that not because an opportunity was there, but because I believe in their technology, the technology overall, and the future of it. And I don't think it's going to be just artists live streaming their shows every night back to their fans at home. I think it's going to be about creating tentpole moments throughout an artist's career. Maybe it's on your record release day, you're going to create this really special moment that you broadcast out to all your fans everywhere that everyone can participate in. It may be, if you're an artist like a Fish that plays a different set every night, it may be broadcasting more often. Like, you're playing Red Rocks tonight. It's a beautiful venue. You're going to broadcast it because it's wired and you can do it. And then the other piece of it that I see is, the artists who used to put out DVDs at the end of tours. I see that as a replacement where you're going to put together a really interesting event that, you know, would have been your DVD production, but now is your live stream production. And you're going to see these moments built into album cycles for artists. And it's going to be a new line item for artists generating revenue from live. And we haven't figured out exactly how it's going to work, and nobody knows for sure other than the technology exists. But I'm excited about other concepts. Like, you look at a country like India, there's 1 billion people who live in India. I work in rock music, and rock music is starting to get a foothold in India, but the infrastructure for touring in India isn't great for rock music yet. So can you put on a concert specifically for fans in India that you broadcast from the States to Indian fans, priced at a price that fits the market for there, and build a fan base so that you could later tour there? And I see so many like unique opportunities. And another one, you know, I look at two of you folks on the panel who work for various city organizations. I see opportunities where, like, if you have an iconic location in Memphis where you have an artist play a live show at that location, that maybe the city organization in Memphis supports that show because it's going to drive tourism dollars back to Memphis or revenue back to the Memphis music industry, and that organization is going to sponsor the show so everyone globally can learn about music in Memphis. So like I'm excited about that. I'm talking about doing some live streams from a hotel that's a resort hotel where you have an artist playing a live stream on their property, and the hotel is then showcasing their property and funding the show while also serving the fans with a concert. So I think it's just going to be a bunch of new ways of doing things, but it's exciting. And hi to whoever that is watching.
My son, Andy, can you say hi? Hi. I agree with everything you just said 100%. I think that tourism, convention and tourism bureaus across the country are going to start to utilize streaming as a way to bring people back, reintegrate people back into their cities. Cities like Austin and Memphis and Nashville, who are at the pinnacle of convention and tourism operations already, are going to begin implementing streaming in a way that is huge and exciting. And I agree with everything you just said. Yes.
Yep.
And I'll just say is the other piece of it is the big incredible innovative stuff is amazing, and actually just got me excited, Randy, just talking about those ideas. But the reason I hope it really sticks around is for the independent artists for whom it is a very, very cheap additional revenue stream. And Randy, to your point, a fantastic way to build an audience in a market that you want to tour in, or in markets plural that you want to tour in. But
and that works for small or large acts. It doesn't have to be big. I'm thinking big because I work with big acts, but
of course,
works at all levels.
Yeah, it's such a cheap thing to do as an artist, and it can be a real revenue stream that requires so little, really. And I think that's critical. So I really hope that the hunger for it sticks around.
All right. Well, fantastic. And we are right at our time for today. So I want to respect your time. I think we can wrap there. My takeaway from this was, yes, live music has survived the pandemic, and we're getting back into it. There might be some speed bumps, there might be, some challenges, but we're going to take the hard-won new skills, particularly live streaming, and we're going to emphasize the transparency that we've all had to gain of like recognizing that we're all humans, and our kids walk into the room, and we're all capable of getting really, really sick, and we have to protect one another. And I think all of that is going to color the artist experience. For the fans, we have a new appreciation, maybe the most ever in our lifetime, of the value of music in our lives. And hopefully that greater appreciation is going to translate into more respect for artists, not being taken for granted, willing to pay more, pay the cover, tip the band, buy the merch, all of those things. And thank you so much for your input tonight. This has been really optimistic. Elizabeth, you were not pessimistic at all. I think that you brought optimism. All three of you did. I appreciate your varying perspectives. So thank you again for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back next month, May 12th, with our next free virtual session, and we'll be talking about how to create a killer submission for a music prize for artists. So hope to see you back here May 12th. And good luck to all of you. Stephanie, we will see you on the road.
Yes.
All right.
Ready.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice meeting you.
Good night.
Bye.